Imagine, just for a second, that your personality isn't just a grab bag of memories and feelings.
Or that bad habit of biting your nails.
Right. Imagine instead that you are, I don't know, a high-stakes physics experiment. Or maybe a volatile chemical reaction just bubbling away in a beaker.
It's a terrifying image, isn't it? But it's also really compelling.
It is, but here's the question. What if the way you react to stress, or fall in love, or even how you learn a new skill follows the exact same rigid laws that govern stars, atoms, and bacteria?
And that is the central question of the source material we're covering today. It's called the KX synthesis. And frankly, it is not your standard self-help book.
No.
You are not going to find advice on manifesting abundance in here.
No, this is much, much denser. It's a framework that tries to map the human psyche, which they call the KX, using the hard sciences. And I have to be honest, when I first saw this, I was a little skeptical.
I'm sure.
I mean, human emotions are messy. They're irrational. Can you really map a messy breakup to physics?
That's the skepticism I expect.
Yeah.
But that's actually the point. The universe is messy too.
That's true.
Stars explode, particles collide, entropy tears things apart. The synthesis argues that we aren't separate from those laws. It views the self through three lenses at the same time: physics, biology, and chemistry.
Okay, so break that down for me. I'm a person, not a science fair project. What does that actually look like?
Well, in physics, it views you as a particle, or maybe a vector holding a charge. You have direction and you have magnitude.
Okay.
In biology, you're an embryonic cell, dividing with purpose. You're trying to build a system that can survive. And in chemistry, you are a catalyst.
A catalyst.
You're entering situations and accelerating change without being, consumed by it.
I do like the idea of being a catalyst. It sounds a lot better than just floating through life. It implies we have an impact.
Exactly. And the source, it outlines a journey. It's not just a static map, it's a timeline. From the moment of birth, what they call the quantum ignition, all the way to the legacy you leave behind.
So our mission for this deep dive is to walk through that timeline. But I don't want to just list the stages. I want to figure out if this actually helps us understand why we do the things we do. Because the intro of the text, it throws out some heavy metaphors right away. It calls the mind a nucleus of potential energy.
Right. And think about a proton in the center of an atom. It's holding that positive charge. It draws experiences into its orbit like electrons. But the key concept they introduced really early on is the conservation of momentum.
Okay, Physics 101, an object in motion stays in motion.
Correct. But apply that to your psychology. If you have momentum, resilience, drive, even stubbornness, you're unyielding. When you collide with an obstacle, you don't just stop. You transfer that energy. You create a new trajectory. The text calls the mind a reaction vessel.
A reaction vessel?
Yeah, we're constantly trying to find equilibrium while things are basically exploding around us.
Speaking of explosions, let's start at the very beginning. The source doesn't call birth, it calls it the quantum ignition.
Which is, arguably the coolest way to describe being born.
It is, but it also sounds violent. The text compares it to a fusion reaction.
Think about what fusion actually is. In physics, you take these isolated particles, you smash them together under immense pressure, and they release just boundless energy. That's the metaphor for the infant mind.
Okay, so I'm picturing a toddler having a meltdown in a supermarket. That definitely feels like a fusion reaction. Boundless energy, total chaos.
That's actually a perfect example. Psychologically, the source maps this directly to Freud's concept of the id. It's that raw, instinctual drive. I want, I need, I scream. It's just uninhibited energy looking for a way out.
So the ignition phase is about that initial burst. But we can't just stay as these exploding stars of emotion. We have to organize.
Right. And this is where the biological lens comes in, neurogenesis.
This is the brain building itself.
Yeah, exactly. Stem cells differentiating. It's pure trial and error. The text describes it as building networks to adapt to stimuli. It's kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks, but on a cellular level. You try a behavior, you get a reaction, you build a pathway.
There was a chemistry term in the section that really tricked me up, though, the redox process. I haven't heard that since high school.
Don't worry, I think a lot of people block out high school chemistry. Redox just stands for reduction oxidation. It's a chemical reaction where electrons are transferred. Oxidation strips electrons away, reduction adds them.
Okay, but how does stripping electrons apply to a kid learning to be a person? That just sounds destructive.
It is destructive, in a way. Think of oxidation as stripping away all the infinite possibilities you had as a baby.
Ugh.
You can't be everything. So to become someone, you have to lose the ability to be anyone. You strip away those chaotic layers to reveal a core, and then, through reduction, you add new layers.
Yeah.
Skills, language, rules.
So it's a trade-off. You lose that raw, chaotic freedom.
But you gain structure. Precisely. The text says the mind learns equilibrium, like a pendulum swinging towards centered oscillation. You're moving from the chaos of the fusion bomb toward a steady rhythm. You're turning vulnerability into strength.
Which moves us naturally into the next stage. We've ignited, we're starting to settle down, now we need to grow. The source calls this synaptic expansion.
And the metaphor shifts here completely. We stop looking at explosions and we start looking at ecosystems.
The imagery of roots is used a lot here. Neurons branching out like roots in soil.
Searching for the nutrients of knowledge. This corresponds to the psychological stage of industry versus inferiority. It's that time in childhood where you're constantly asking, am I good at anything?
Oh, I remember that phase. Desperately trying to be good at soccer, then piano, then video games, just trying to find something that clicked.
And that's the biological mandate. Competence. Positive reinforcement strengthens those neural pathways. If you're good at piano, that root gets deeper. If you're bad at soccer, that root just withers.
But then the text throws a curveball. It brings in quantum mechanics with the wave function. This felt a little out there for me. Can we ground this?
Sure. So in quantum mechanics, a particle doesn't really exist in one spot until you observe it. Before that, it's just a wave of probabilities. It could be here, it could be there.
Right. Schrodinger's cat and all that stuff.
Exactly. So apply that to your personality in this expansion phase. As a young person, you are a wave of probabilities. You could be an artist, an engineer, a criminal, a saint. But when you make a choice, when you act with intent, you collapse the wave function.
You force potential to become reality.
Yes, you force it.
So growing up is basically just a series of wave function collapses. You're narrowing down the infinite you into the actual you.
That's the tragedy and the beauty of it. And chemically, they call this polymerization.
Okay, polymerization makes me think of plastics. Or like Tupperware?
It is the same principle, monomers, these single loose units linking up to form long, durable chains.
So before this stage, we're just loose monomers floating around.
Or a loose collection of impulses, yeah.
Yeah.
Polymerization is the process of linking those values and habits together to create a structure that actually holds up. It's the difference between a pile of bricks and a wall. The source notes these chains are resistant to breakdown. This is where you start to feel like a coherent person.
There was one more metaphor in this section I really wanted to unpack because it's so visual. The Doppler shift. Red shifting past limitations, blue shifting toward potential.
This is a favorite of mine. You know the sound an ambulance makes when it drives past you. That meow.
Yeah, high pitch coming at you, low pitch going away.
Right. That change in pitch is the Doppler shift. And light does the same thing. When an object moves toward you really fast, the light looks bluer. When it moves away, it looks redder.
So how are we the ambulance in this scenario?
The self is moving through time. And the source argues we should be blue shifting, moving at high velocity toward our potential, toward the future. The red shift is our limitations, our past mistakes, just fading away behind us.
I like that. It's about orientation. Stop listening to the low pitch of the past and tune in to the high frequency of where you're going.
Exactly. But, and there is always a but,
Here it comes.
you can't just expand forever. Eventually, the universe pushes back.
And this is where the story gets real. Phase 3. Entropic challenges.
Entropy, the villain of the universe, a tendency for everything, your coffee, your room, your life, to just dissolve into disorder.
This is the struggle phase, and I think everyone listening can relate to this. You build a plan, you have your polymer chain all set up, and then life throws a brick at it.
Or the chain just starts to degrade on its own. Friction erodes momentum. But the source uses a chemical principle here that I think changes how we view stress. Le Chatelier's principle?
Oh man, I definitely failed the test on Le Chatelier.
You and me both. But the concept is actually pretty intuitive. It just states that if you apply stress to a system at equilibrium, the system will shift to counteract that stress.
So if I add heat, the system tries to cool itself down.
Exactly. It rebalances. So apply this to your mind. When you are under massive stress, a job loss, grief, a trauma, your psyche doesn't just sit there. It actively shifts its equilibrium to absorb the blow.
So that fight or flight feeling, or that cognitive dissonance where your brain hurts because reality doesn't match your expectations, that's Le Chatelier's principle in action.
It's the mechanics of adaptation. It's not a malfunction. It is the system working.
Yeah.
The text connects this to Jungian shadow integration. You have these conflicting parts of yourself clashing, and that friction creates heat.
And heat changes states of matter. Which brings us to my absolute favorite image in this whole thing, the super-cooled liquid.
This is such a cool phenomenon.
Hmm.
You can take water and cool it strictly below freezing, but if you keep it perfectly still, it won't turn to ice. It stays liquid.
It's just waiting.
It's waiting. It's unstable. And the moment you tap the glass or drop a single speck of dust in there,
Snap.
instant crystallization. The whole thing turns solid in a flash.
So the metaphor here is that we are that liquid. We're floating along, maybe a little too cool, a little too undefined.
And the entropic challenge, the trauma, the stress, the failure, that is the tap on the glass. It forces us to crystallize. We emerge stronger, more solid, and more structured because of the pressure, not despite it.
That reframes the midlife crisis or the breakdown entirely. It's not a breakdown, it's a crystallization event. You're finally becoming solid.
Exactly. And once you are solid, once you've weathered that storm, you enter a new dynamic. Phase 4, catalytic convergence.
This sounds a lot smoother.
It is. This is the flow state.
The text mentions laminar fluid dynamics. Now, I've seen those videos online where water flows so smoothly it almost looks like glass.
That's laminar flow.
It doesn't even look like it's moving.
Right, no turbulence, no chaotic mixing, just efficient parallel layers moving in harmony. This is the stage where your internal dialogue stops fighting with itself.
And things start to feel easier.
That's the chemical catalyst at work.
Right, a catalyst speeds things up.
It lowers the activation energy. Think about how hard it was to make difficult decisions when you were younger. You agonized over them.
Oh, totally. Paralysis by analysis.
But in this phase, if you've done the work, you have wisdom. And wisdom is a catalyst.
Yeah.
It lowers the energy required to act. You see the problem, you know the solution, you just move. You don't need a huge explosion to get things done anymore.
That ties into the biological metaphor here, symbiosis. The text brings up the evolution of mitochondria.
Which is one of the most important events in the history of life. Billions of years ago, a cell swallowed a bacterium, and instead of digesting it, they decided to work together. That bacterium became the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell.
So we are basically walking co-ops.
We are. And in the psyche, this means you stop trying to do everything alone. You integrate your environment, your relationships, your tools. You enter a mutualistic relationship with the world. You feed it, and it feeds you.
And physics gives us relativity here, turning obstacles into accelerators.
Perception bending time and space. When you're in a flow state, time dilates. 5 hours can feel like 5 minutes. You are conserving momentum. You hit a problem, and you bounce off it without losing speed, just changing direction.
So we float into this high state, but apparently there's a peak. Phase 5, radiant equilibrium.
The zenith. This is where the metaphor goes cosmic. We are now a star.
Hydrostatic equilibrium. That sounds impressive, but what does it mean for a star?
A star is a constant battle. Gravity is trying to crush it inward, to collapse it into a single point. But the nuclear fusion in the core is pushing outward, trying to explode it. A star stays a star because those two massive forces are perfectly balanced.
That is a profound way to look at emotional stability. It's not that you don't have pressure, gravity's still crushing you,
It's always crushing you.
but you have enough internal fire pushing back to hold your shape.
Exactly. It's not the absence of stress, it's the presence of a counterforce. Psychologically, this is eudaimonia, it's flourishing.
And chemically, they use the term buffered solution.
I love this because it's so practical. A buffered solution is a liquid that resists changes in pH. You can drop acid into it, you can drop a base into it, and the pH number barely moves.
So in real life, this is that person who keeps their cool when everything is on fire.
Yes, imagine a CEO during a market crash, or a parent in an emergency room. Everyone else is spiking, their pH is going wild. The buffered person absorbs the shock and stays stable. That is true power.
And because they're stable, they affect everyone else. The source calls this psychological contagion.
We're social animals. We mimic the nervous systems of the people around us. If you are radiating that star-like equilibrium, you act as a gravity well. You stabilize the people around you just by being there.
You become the lighthouse.
Or the anchor. You aren't just surviving anymore, you are radiating.
Which brings us to the end, the final chapter. We've ignited, expanded, crystallized, flowed, and shown. What is left? Phase 6, eternal resonance.
The legacy. This is where the self transcends the individual body.
The physics here gets really mind-bending. Quantum entanglement.
Spooky action at a distance. The idea is that once particles interact, they remain connected, no matter how far apart they get. Even at opposite ends of the universe, if you change one, the other responds instantly.
So the implication is that everyone we've ever interacted with, we are still entangled with.
Physics says yes. You have left an imprint on their state that cannot be erased.
That's haunting.
Yeah.
But also beautiful.
And chemically, this is the most complex metaphor in the book. Supercritical fluids.
Right. You mentioned this is a weird state of matter.
It is. Imagine heating a liquid in a pressurized container. As it gets hotter, it expands. As the pressure builds, the gas gets denser. And eventually, the distinction between liquid and gas just vanishes. The meniscus, the surface line, disappears.
Wow.
You have this fog that can move through solids like a gas, but dissolve things like a liquid.
So the boundaries are gone.
The container is gone. The distinction between me and the world dissolves. It's a state of total integration.
That sounds like spiritual transcendence mapped onto chemistry. The self isn't a contained vessel anymore, it's just a pervasive presence.
Exactly. And that leads to the final image. The cosmic microwave background.
The echo of the Big Bang.
We can still hear the Big Bang today. If you turn on an old analog TV to a static channel, a small percentage of that static is radiation left over from the birth of the universe.
So the KX synthesis argues that our lives create a similar static.
It argues that consciousness is an energy event, and energy cannot be created or destroyed. So the vibration of your life, the signal you generated, continues to propagate through the network of humanity long after the original source is gone.
Harmonizing chaos into enduring symphony.
It's a comforting thought that the initial spark, that quantum ignition we talked about with this screaming toddler, eventually becomes a background warmth for the future.
So let's zoom out and look at this roadmap one last time.
Quite a journey.
We start as a fusion bomb raw, chaotic, dangerous. We grow roots, use the Doppler shift to find our direction. We hit the wall of entropy and crystallize under pressure. We find our flow as a catalyst. We achieve the balance of a star. And finally, we dissolve into the atmosphere as a supercritical fluid, leaving a signal behind.
It really reinforces the core message. You are not just a person having feelings. You are a walking physics experiment. The laws that govern the burning of stars govern the burning of your own ambition.
It makes the hard days feel a little more noble, doesn't it? It's not just I'm having a bad day. It's I'm undergoing an entropic phase change.
Or I'm buffering the solution for my family.
Exactly. It gives purpose to the mechanics.
And that leads to the final thought I want to leave with you. We talked about that cosmic microwave background, the signal that remains.
Right. The echo.
If this framework is true, and your psyche is constantly broadcasting a vibration that will linger, you have to ask yourself, what kind of signal is your KX currently broadcasting into the future? Are you broadcasting static and noise, or are you broadcasting a clear, steady signal?
That is a huge question to chew on for the commute home. Are you noise or are you music?
Let's hope for music.
I'm going to work on my signal. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us and for breaking down the physics of the soul.
Always a pleasure.
We'll catch you in the next deep dive. Stay fluid.